bestbookbits.com brings you the book summary of The Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard. Book summary. Consciousness is one, manifesting in many forms, all levels of consciousness. I am is the self-definition of the absolute and the foundation for everything. A person's concept of themselves determines their experience of the world they live in. The individual state of consciousness explains the phenomenon of life. Changing one's concept of themselves can lead to higher and higher concepts and experiences. The foundational nature of consciousness is unchangeable and eternal. The purpose of life is to discover one's true identity as the eternal I am. The journey to discovering one's true identity involves letting go of negative concepts and embracing positive ones. The attainment of a high level of consciousness brings about the experience of oneness with God. Changing life are the result of a change in one's concepts of oneself, not external causes. The ideal a person seeks will not manifest until they imagine they are already that ideal. A radical psychological transformation, including feeling as if one's wish is already fulfilled, is necessary for the realization of goals. One's attitude towards oneself determines what can be realized. Suggestion and complete abandonment of an ideal is necessary for transformation. Imagining oneself as already experienced a desired outcome and feeling as if the wish is fulfilled can lead to its manifestation. To reach a higher level of being, a higher concept of oneself must be assumed. Life is determined by assumptions, and one must try to become the master of their assumptions to attain freedom and happiness. Controlled imagination and sustained attention focused on an object can lead to its manifestation. Thinking from an ideal instead of thinking from an ideal leads to its manifestation. Attention is important for achieving success and changing your future. To develop and control your attention, practice focusing on the events of your day in reverse order before you sleep. With replaced practice, you can develop a center of power and become aware of your true self. When you have control of the internal direction of your attention, you can walk in the assumption of your wish fulfilled. To change your concept of yourself and your future, focus your attention on the feeling of your wish being fulfilled. The power of attention is increased by the narrowness of its focus and by the exclusion of other ideas. The idea that dominates your consciousness and have your attention are the ones that lead to action. Imagination is able to do anything, but only according to the internal direction of your attention. The attentive attitude involves selection and is directed toward a specific goal. To increase the power of your attention, focus on one object or state and exclude other ideas. Renunciation involves taking your attention away from evil and focusing on what you want instead. Practice renouncing negative thoughts and feelings by focusing your attention on your desired ideals. You can claim and appropriate what you desire by imagining that you already possess it. Your thoughts and beliefs about yourself shape your reality. Obedience to the law of assumption or the power of imagination and belief determines your experiences in life. By renouncing negative thoughts and focusing on your desired goals, you can change your concept of yourself and thereby change your future. The process of renunciation involves relinquishing attachments to material possessions and ego. The ultimate goal of renunciation is to discover and unite with the higher self. The concept you have of yourself determines your life. To change your life, you must change your concepts of yourself. This can be achieved through the use of imagination and attention. Attention can be attracted from the outside or directed from within. To control your future, you must learn to direct your attention subjectively. This can be achieved through the task of deliberately withholding your attention from the objective world and focusing it subjectively. Once you have control over the movements of your attention in the subjective world, you are in control of your fate. You should not accept the dominance of the outside condition or the circumstances, but rather change them through the use of imagination and attention. This process requires renunciation of negative thoughts and feelings and the assumption of positive ones. The key to success is persistence in the use of imagination and attention. The principle of least action states that to move from one state to another, a minimum of energy and time must be used. The psychological equivalent of least action is an assumption which works by means of attention minus the effort. Assumptions have the power of objective realization, and every event in the visible world is a result of an assumption or idea in the unseen world. The future becomes the present in your mind when you imagine that you already are what you will be when your assumption is fulfilled. The Immaculate Conception is the birth of an idea in your own consciousness, unaided by another. The assumption is the highest use of consciousness when you assume the feeling of the wish is fulfilled and it becomes actual fact. The natural and only way to lift yourself up to the level of your assumption is by feeling it, not by striving or struggling. To change your future, you must change your assumption, which will then guide all your consciousness and subconscious movements towards its suggested end. The principle of least action, using the minimum of energy and time, governs the journey from one state of consciousness to another. The psychological equivalent of least action is an assumption, which works through attention and without effort. Your desired state already exists but is excluded from view. An assumption brings it into light by changing your perspective. Assumptions have the power of objective realization, and events in the visible world are the result of assumptions in the unseen world. Control and concentration of attention are necessary to modify or alter your life. Attention can be attracted from without or directed from within. The present moment is the only time when assumptions can be controlled. To assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled is to mentally lift oneself to a higher level. To achieve a desired state, one must persist in the assumption and be a doer of the work. Essential points for the successful use of the law of assumption include intense desire, the mainspring of action, and the intention to succeed. To achieve a desired state, one must identify with it and transform oneself into it. Righteousness is the consciousness of already being what you want to be. Sin means not attaining your desire or not being the person you want to be. Righteousness is the only way to be saved from sin. It is a mistake to focus on things rather than on the consciousness of already having them. The kingdom of God is within you, and the righteousness is the awareness that you already possess it all. There is no free will to do anything except assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Everything happens automatically based on your assumptions, whether conscious or unconscious. The law of assumption operates automatically without any effort on your part. Righteousness is not attained through religion, good deeds, or moral behavior. The only thing necessary to make the law of assumption work is to feel the wish fulfilled with all your heart. The principle of persistence, or continuing in the assumption of the wish fulfilled, is essentially for the successful use of the law of assumption. Persistence is demonstrated in the parable of Jacob seeking the blessing, the Shunammite seeking help from Elijah, and the widow seeking help from a judge. To pray means to give thanks for already having what you desire. Persistence in the assumption of the wish fulfilled causes subtle changes in the mind that result in the desired change in your life. Other people in the world will respond in harmony with persistent assumptions rather than being reluctant or resistant. A maintained attitude of the wish fulfilled rather than a single isolated act is necessary for the effective use of the law of assumption. Frequent assumption of the feeling of the wish fulfilled rather than the length of time helps to make it a natural and maintained attitude. The law of assumption can be compared to a mathematical equation, where persistence in the assumption of the wish fulfilled is the constant factor. The law of assumption can also be compared to a seed, which needs the constant factors of warmth, moisture, and air to grow and bear fruit. Persistence in the assumption of the wish fulfilled leads to the realization of the desire and the end of yearning. Failure is the use of the law of assumption can be attributed to a lack of feeling of naturalness about the desired outcome. This feeling of naturalness can be achieved through persistent imagination, envisioning oneself already being or having what is desired. Success or failure in attaining a desired outcome is solely determined by one's own state of consciousness. If an assumption is not fulfilled, it is due to an error or weakness in consciousness that can be overcome. The time it takes for an assumption to become reality is proportional to the naturalness of being it. Man's outer world is a reflection of his inner world and thoughts. The law of assumption is a universal law that can be applied to any desire. The use of the law of assumption requires persistence, faith, and a feeling of naturalness. Destiny is the inevitable experience one must face and is influenced by one's own consciousness. It is possible to consciously create one's own destiny by understanding the cause of one's experience and the power of consciousness. The study of the law of assumption is key to achieving the highest level of destiny. One's true self is the consciousness that knows one's identity, and it is the foundation of the law of assumption and the basis for feeling of reverence and worship. And last, the deepest feelings, including those of reverence and worship, often the most difficult to express. And that's a wrap on this book summary, The Power of Awareness. If you like the summary, click the link to download this. We at Best Book Bits again have done over 1,000 book summaries in video, written, and audio format. So check out the website, bestbookbits.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and listen to us on Apple Podcast. If you want to support our channel, we have put together our top 500 Best Book Bit summaries in one massive downloadable PDF so you can keep offline along with the MP3. Listen forever. Thank you again for watching and listening. Have yourself an amazing day. Take care. Bye-bye now.